All right. So our first question comes from Sean Patrick Murray, and I apologize if I butcher any names here. I'm just kind of going off how I would pronounce your name. Uh, he said, since every Zelda game in the series has its own fanboys and or things that people hate about it, what do you think Nintendo could do with Zelda U to get everyone on the same boat and have everyone like it and make it the best Zelda game ever?
Wow, that's really a tough one.
I warned you. These are some pretty loaded questions.
Oh yeah. I'm thinking now this might be pretty out there, but what if they went the Life is Strange route? That's a game made by Telltale Games. They kind of included different paths you could take, different outcomes, so that if one user didn't like the story, maybe they could go back and choose a different path. Just kind of switch up the narratives a bit.
Yeah, kind of switch things up. It you first off you cut out Darren, so I'm just gonna kind of continue on here.
Okay.
No, I like where you were going with the Telltale Games stuff there. There's a lot of games today that kind of go in that branching story arc. That was actually a big controversy with what is it, Mass Effect 3, that they only had one ending despite all the different choices you could make in the game. I don't know if that's going to make people happy. I think chiefly off the bat, it's impossible to please every single Zelda fan. You could have a game be considered the best game ever, but there's always going to be people that don't like it. As an example, Ocarina of Time is often considered one of the best Zelda games, if not the best in the series, and there's still a pretty large chunk of the fan base that don't think that way. They feel Majora's Mask is the best, or Twilight Princess. Some feel that they like the 2D games better, so they like A Link to the Past better. So it's one of those that I don't know that there is a way to really bring everyone together. This question actually brings me back a bit because I made a new Bossman episode about a month back that dealt with uniting the fan base. How can Nintendo bring the fan base together and for one Zelda game? And I talked a lot about Zelda U. And I don't know that it's possible. Now, if you just want to talk about, having the popular opinion, kind of like Ocarina of Time as the popular opinion as the best Zelda game or one of the best games ever made, you can still pull that off. That just means you need to get a majority of the fan base on board. I think Zelda U is going to run into a few issues with this. For starters, it doesn't use an art style that's going to appeal to the mainstream Zelda audience. That's just something that we have to deal with. We have to accept. I think it's gorgeous. I know a lot of people that think it's gorgeous. But there'll also be a lot of people that will write it off just because of that. And that's unfortunate.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I personally like the art style as well. As with every game, there'll be people who do not like the art style, such as the Wind Waker. Some people like its almost cartoonish style, but others really don't like it.
Exactly. It's one of those, you can't please everyone. But among those that play the game and actually give it a chance, despite the fact that right now it's a Wii U only game, which is probably going to help hinder sales more than Nintendo would like to think, and this assumes it doesn't come to NX, it's one of those that the people that play the game, I think it's already heading in the right direction to be considered one of the best Zelda games in the series. For starters, it's got the open world aspect, and open world games are a really big deal right now out in the gaming sphere. Almost every single major release outside of like a shooting game and a multiplayer game like that is all open world. Like at the Game Awards 2015, The Witcher 3 took home the Game of the Year award, and that's an open world game. Grand Theft Auto 5 is one of the best-selling games ever in the history of video games, and that's an open world game. Skyrim, which is a game that people often compare Zelda to at times, that is also an open world game. So if you look at it, just kind of in the genre Zelda falls into and the trending in games, open world games are a big deal right now. So if Zelda is open world, as Eiji Aonumu keeps saying it is, although he says they have their own unique twist on it, which hopefully that unique twist doesn't mean it's not open world and it's actually linear, but it looks like it's open world. I think that the fact that it's going to be an open world Zelda is really going to help it out. Obviously, the story is a big deal. We did an internet fan poll, the survey for 2015, Ultimate Fan Survey, and I sent the results to Nintendo. We had over 9,000 people answer that survey, and really, people love the story more than anything else. And that's always interesting to me because Zelda usually has a pretty weak story. But the mythos surrounding the series, I think, is what people really love a lot. And we can get into that later. I think there's a fan question related to the timeline later that has to do with that. But this question specifically, I would just say they're on the right track. They can't do much about people who aren't going to like the art style, but they have the open world. They have the mystery surrounding Link and his mysterious tunic and the sword and the book, and they got fans talking about it a lot. All they really have to do is kind of deliver on what the game is promising so far, which is a big, giant open world experience that will let you do a lot of different things. The only thing I think that would let that open world fall apart is if the world is really empty. So if they avoid the emptiness, they add a lot of side quests, they add a plethora of dungeons. I'm talking 9, 10, 11, 12 dungeons in there. And not just obvious ones where like, oh, you see a tower off in the distance, well, that's a dungeon. Well, I mean, why can't I chop away a tree or something and look, there's an entrance to a dungeon behind it, like the original Zelda. So I think if they kind of combine a lot of the elements that Zelda's done before into one, you could really come away with what many would consider to be the best Zelda game, and if not the best Zelda game because they just can't get past Ocarina of Time or whatever your favorite game is. It'll be considered probably Eiji Anomu's best made Zelda game. His signature game in the whole franchise, if that makes sense. 'Cause I think right now you would say his signature game is probably Majora's Mask or The Wind Waker. But I think if he's going to have one game that's going to leave a lasting impression and impact the series for the next decade, this game has that chance.
Oh, I definitely agree. I'm thinking that maybe he wants to create it as, the game he's known for simply because this might be his last Zelda game.
Last console one. Probably,
right, his last console Zelda game. I could see that being his drive to try and create a game that would appeal to a large, like the largest chunk of the fan base, so a lot aren't left out.
Exactly. And, I don't know if that's his idea behind going to open world. He's talked in the past that in Skyward Sword they wanted it to be open world, but it just didn't really seem to work out. It's obviously been working out this time because the only thing we've seen of the game is its open worldness. So that's obviously one of the number one emphasis for the game. And considering that exploration and story kind of rank really high up there, open world games can really open the door to that kind of what fans really like about the series. It can dive it a little bit away from combat and more into exploration, but that's what a lot of us play this games for. So I think it's going to work out really well. So to really summarize it up, Sean, there is no way to really unite the whole fan base, but if we're just going to kind of narrow our scope to the impact that Eiji Anomu has had on the series, or Eiji Anomu, I always butcher his name. I think it's Eiji Aonomu.
I guess so. I've always pronounced it like Eiji Aonuma, but
the thing is, I've had a lot of fans correct me on how to pronounce his name. So I'm sure we both have it wrong.
Yeah.
Dang Japanese people, man. So to kind of summarize that up, we don't really know if it's possible to create the game that you're looking for, but if we narrow it down to his games that he has created, and in terms of having impact on the future of the series, I think Zelda U has the biggest chance of having that impact, just because, one, it returns to the open world, which we've never actually had an open world 3D Zelda game. It's just never happened. They've tried. Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess tried to get there, but they really weren't open world. They were very narrow focused, and you could only go to areas when the game let you go to them. And the world obviously wasn't this big. I mean, this is clearly the biggest world we've ever seen in a game for Zelda. So I think it has a chance to set the standards for the future, and it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with the series after Zelda U. Because now you have this open world game. Can you really go back to a game that's not open world after that? Especially if it is really well received. So there is no definitive answer, but I think we can all agree that this has a chance to be the defining game for the series going forward. So I hope that answers your question, Sean.